I was here for aha Ghanatube so me mama kwaba and back channel way so and I'm when say someone who do I cause we were my gun no and e de ebe who's here for my popoa and say back me be able say yenkotie who's here for dimechi na yenkotie ensem.
Ghana export sector faces a fresh setback as the United States slaps a 10% tariff on key exports, affecting trade volumes and increasing financial costs for businesses, a move that follows sweeping trade policies authorized by U.S. President Donald Trump. The executive order, which affects several trading partners, is expected to rattle global trade relations, and Ghana is no exception. With bilateral trade between Ghana and the U.S. valued at $3 billion, concerns arrive that tariff could strain relations. However, U.S. Ambassador to Ghana, Virginia Palmer, insists that despite the policy shift, Ghana remains an important partner to the United States.
The United States and Ghana have a very long-standing, close relationship, as you all know, and it's founded on kind of four pillars, I think. The first is historical and cultural, and something more than $3 billion in bilateral trade and investment is another kind of key pillar, and that's goods and services, but oil and gas going from here, gold going from here, pharmaceuticals, automobiles coming from the United States. So it's something that builds prosperity in both Ghana and the United States. So all of that to say that no matter what the change in language and how we express it or the change in focus, Ghana is a really important partner of the United States and will continue to be so. And I think that sort of emphasis on those things are really exciting because, again, the United States is behind Ghana's economic recovery. And that's through things like the World Bank and the IMF, but also American company interest in coming here. And there's going to be a big trade mission, which I can't announce yet, but it's coming. And I think there'll be a big U.S.-Africa business summit here next year. And I think both of those things will be good signals of the interest from American business in Ghana.
Now, the policy will impact industries exporting cocoa, textiles, agricultural products, among others, while Washington cites economic protectionism as the reason. Experts say Ghanaian exporters and businesses could face a rising cost and potential job losses. Now, lead data and research analyst Isaac Ofieje is here to give meaning to the figures in the Ghana-America trade. Now, Kofi, always a pleasure to see you because you always put it in a better perspective. What will we be learning today? Well,
so what looked like just a campaign promise is now being materialized. So in the 2024 lead up to that election, we all realize that apart from immigration, the biggest, item for President Trump was trade. And he is, making this come into fruition by announcing this, sweeping tariff announcement. Let's go to the next slide that talks about what he promised to do in terms of tariffs. Apart from cutting taxes, he said that one way that America was going to raise revenue was to perform, sweeping tariff on imports. And how sweeping is this new announcement that we are seeing? So let's look at the map and see how this is going to affect the global space. Let's look at that. You can see those in red. If you find yourself in deep red, it means you are in trouble. And you are right. I usually don't hold papers, but these are two, sheets that, America, if you are still in the baseline, list, it means that you're still in America's good books. If you find yourself in the worst offenders list, it means that America really wants to deal with you in terms of reciprocal tariffs. So you see those who are in red. And let's come to Africa, for instance. You can see that the northern part of the continent actually has some sort of reds in there. Morocco, Algeria are all included. But in West Africa, it's relatively, yellow in terms of the tariff imposition, except for Ivory Coast. That saw some reddish, movement in terms of the magnitude of the tariff. But if you look at countries like Nigeria and Ghana, we are still within the baseline. But let me go through the baseline figures, and if you find yourself
on this list, baseline, you didn't tell us what reciprocal tariffs are. The reciprocal means that US is looking at the magnitude of the tariffs you are putting on their goods, and then they will reciprocate with
maybe the same or higher tariff.
Right.
Absolutely. When it comes to Ghana, we have a 17% tariff on goods coming from the US. They have reciprocated by giving us a 10% tariff on our goods, meaning that we are still in the good books of the US. So we find ourselves in the same bracket as the United Kingdom, and also Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, Turkey, Colombia, Argentina, and the United Arab Emirates, which means that Ghana finds itself within that good bracket. But this is for the worst offenders, and we don't like to be in this, on this list. China is number one in terms of not the magnitude, but in terms of being targeted as a big economy. But in terms of magnitude, you can talk about a small country in Africa called Lesotho.
Right.
Why? Because Lesotho and Cambodia all has very high tariffs on US goods. Lesotho, for instance, poses some 99% tariff on US. They have actually reciprocated by giving them that big tariff. That's why you see Lesotho and South Africa all in red. And so China, for instance, is suffering 54% tariff, including old ones that are still existing. Thailand is number one. It's also there, 36%. Japan, 24%. Cambodia, I've made mention of that, and Taiwan, 32%. So what you see is that, depending on the tariff you are placing on America, they will come back and then, impose maybe an equal or higher one. What they are doing has just one goal, is for you to come to the negotiation table to negotiate. If you want to bring your tariff down, the US will be also willing, or Trump is willing to consider you and bring the tariff down. But let's look at...
Does it look like we have a negotiating power?
Well, I don't think that... I think Ghana is still in the baseline, so I don't think that we will go... Because where are you going to negotiate to? You are already at the lowest bottom, right? You are in the same bracket
Basically, be grateful.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're in the same bracket as the United Kingdom, which is the darling boy of the US. So be content. But what we are seeing is that usually when Trump or the Republicans are in power, the trade between Africa and US isn't that, high. Just look at between 2016 and 2020 or 2019 when Trump was in office. We are talking about the import, the agua, and everybody is concerned about agua, whether it will be discontinued this year or not. But what we are learning is that when the Democrats or Republicans are actually in power, it always affects trade between, Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and then the US. Let's go to Ghana and focus on our trade relationship with the US. Let's look at the next slide. I think this for me tells a story where if you look at the one in green, which is imports from the US and exports from the US, what you see is that when the Democrats are in power, we have like that flat movement. It isn't actually going up or coming down, but it stays the same. It means that, depending on your economic power, the Republicans will decide to play ball with you. And that is why they've decided to target countries like Canada, China, and the big guys who they know that when they decide to place reciprocal tariff on them and they come back to the negotiations table, they'll get something significant. So it is interesting day, yes. We are still expecting more announcements very soon. But the interesting thing is that although we are crying, we should be grateful that we are in the same bracket as...
I know that the big countries have responded. They haven't responded individually, but collectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In EU, for instance, is preparing also some sort of tariff against US because, when you take UK out of EU, US is not able to deal with them. They suffered about 24% and they are not happy at all.
Yeah.
They are preparing new tariffs for the US. Interesting times ahead.
But for now, Ghana, at least, we should hold mind and soul together, body and mind together. Anyway, thank you so much, Kofi. Well, meanwhile, the diplomat also revealed to Joy News what the future holds for U.S. foreign assistance to Ghana following a 90-day pause on U.S. aid. Now, President John Mahama directed Ghana's finance minister to explore policies to offset a potential revenue loss of $156 million. A significant portion, $70 million, was allocated to life-saving health programs, including the HIV Last Mile project. With the aid suspension nearing its deadline, Ambassador Palmer has assured the life-saving programs will be maintained despite a broader restructuring of U.S. foreign assistance.
We were dealt with almost immediately was a pause and review on foreign assistance of all types. We're almost to the end of that. That kind of 90 days would be April 20th, I think. But many of the programs have been reviewed and changed. Ghana actually has done better than many places. And I'm very pleased that the life-saving programs are all to be continued. So that new phase of partnership will maintain all of the life-saving programs. So the infant and child mortality programs, maternal health programs, the malaria program continues, our HIV programs continue, the essential medicines and vaccines programs continue.
You will see a woman was a moody which my equity and some no bet me and comment no abreme. Na mejibre akinka e dia mofefe me ga we say channel we so Ghanatube so on subscribe hit on the notification bell for quick updates. Obviously for CC ade makram.